Welcome to the first workshop for the Transport Phenomena Unit for 2021. Now, we're going to go through a Fluent exercise. This is the first one that you'll be doing, so we're going to go through everything in complete detail today. So think of this as your Fluent boot camp. In future weeks, of course, we will not provide as much detail because we're going to take as read the things that we cover today. And we're only going to do a video that covers the new skills that you need for each week's exercise. So, first thing you need is a notebook. Pretty much every project that I do, I start a new notebook. One of the things you'll find is, as you learn a new skill, you'll need to write it down. Write down the things that work for you, the way that you remember things working, because the way that you figured things out may be different than the way I figured things out. Having the notebook handy too means that you don't have to flick between screens all the time. I know a lot of people like to type things up and have typed copies of their notes. But if you do that in this setting, you'll be changing screens all the time, and that can be rather tedious. I find it much quicker to go through my notebook and not, but obviously it's going to be down to your preference. Now, the other thing, of course, you'll need is the PDF of the exercise, which is available on the LMS where you got this video. So that contains the basic outline of what our geometry is, along with the key model parameters that we'll be using today. So first thing we need to do is get our analysis started. Now, I'll share the screen. So you'll need to have logged in to the virtual desktop interface, and the instructions for that are on the LMS. Obviously, probably not the way I would have designed the window. It's a little bit busy in the background, but most of the time we'll be covering it up with the operations that we'll be using to create our model. So we go down to the file menu down the bottom left, click on that, and we go to the Answers folder. So we're using 2021 Release 1. Click on that, and we're going to scroll down to the bottom and start Workbench. Now, Workbench is kind of how do we describe it? It's kind of like an organizing, a coordinating program. What it does is it organizes your analysis. It keeps track of where all the files are, puts them in the right directories, and calls up all the software that you need to create your analysis. Used to be once upon a time, this would have all been separate software and then you call it up separately. Now it just gets packaged into this one software package. And Workbench organizes everything for you. When you get into more advanced analyses, you may find that you want to deal directly with the component systems and not use Workbench. But for everything that we do in this course, Workbench will be suitable. And you can see it's got quite a lot going on, so it takes a little while to boot up. Now, this little indicator down the bottom here tells you what's going on, and you can see that we are ready to go. Whenever we start an operation, you'll quite often see a change in the command here, and it'll show you whether it's busy, is it launching something. So this is a good way to check if you're waiting for something to happen, whether something is in fact happening. All right, so we're going to save our analysis. And first step, we'll go to File and Save As. Now, working within this system here, you want to save this to your student drive, your H drive. Now you need to be very careful to make sure that you're not filling up. So I'll just click on that H drive and I'm going to save it in the desktop file. Now I'm not just going to save it to the desktop. I've found in past that that's a little bit unstable. So we're going to save it here in our desktop folder. All right, so we're going to create the file. So we're going to call this workshop 1 and elbow. And save. And you can see it's operating down the bottom here. It's finished saving, it's ready again, and we've now created this workshop 1 elbow. Now, two things will have happened now. You'll see that we've saved the Workbench operation here, a Workbench project file called workshop 1 elbow. We've also created a folder, workshop 1 elbow _ files. So that's where all of the files that we generate during this project will end up. And we'll come back to that a couple of times. You'll also see this .workshop file, which is a backup. This can sometimes be handy if you're trying to recover after a crash. We shouldn't need to use it in this unit, but you never know when that might come up in the future. All right, so if we close our folder. Next step is we need to set our preference for the geometry modeler. And we're going to go to Tools, up the top here, Options, and we go to Geometry Import. Now, see at the moment, your default, probably the first time you come in, will say Preferred Geometry Editor is Space Claim Direct Modeler. We're going to switch that to Design Modeler. There's nothing wrong with Space Claim. I just think that Design Model is easiest when it's the first time that you're creating geometries. So once you've done that, click OK. And we're ready to create our analysis. So next step is we're going to create a Fluent analysis. Now you see in the toolbox on the left here, we have all of these analysis systems. They're all different types of analysis, different software packages. Some are solid mechanics, some of them are fluid mechanics. All right, so we have Fluid Flow and Fluent. We want to create a Fluent analysis, and we could either just click on it and then drag it into the window, or we could double click it. Now, what you can see here is kind of a packaged analysis. It's got all of the individual operations that we need to do to create our Fluent model. So we have the geometry, we have the mesh, setup and solution of both Fluent itself, the actual execution of the model, and the results is how we view the models. Now, we also need to name this. So I'm going to call this one Elbow and Recording, just to distinguish it from the file if I happen to create another one. Make your name something obvious, because as your projects get more complicated, you might have several analyses and you want to be able to find your way around. Now, the other thing you see is you'll see there's a little icon in each box indicating the status. Now, at this point, they're all question marks, which means we need to provide some input to each of those operations before we can go on. All right, now, last step in setting everything up is we will save the analysis now that we've got it here. Now, the reason we're going to save it every time we come out is that there's two types of people who work in CFD. People who have had the software crash and take everything out, and people who are going to have the software crash and take everything out. And the first type are actually going to have it crash again as well. So always save regularly so that if you make a mistake, you can always go back. All right, now with that, we've got our analysis ready to go. In the next video, we'll come back and we'll work through creating our geometry.